Mariah Shane, welcome to the Pain and Performance Podcast. Thanks for doing this, man.
Oh yeah, so I'll be here, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Before we got started, hair growth has been something that I've talked a lot with patients about over the years because, as much as we're dealing with pain in the office, there's always a little bit of a vanity question that comes up. And, when you really start looking at, the whole idea of like you look good, you feel good. I've had patients who come in and they're like, look, you got rid of my neck pain and my headaches are better. If you can do something about these wrinkles or you can do something about this hair, we can have a conversation. And in my
Yeah.
practice, we do all kind of advanced therapies and things like that. So I think that's where the questions come from. But I'd love to hear your background and getting into this world. You've been in it for quite a while.
So, well, actually, before I jump in, you said something super, super important, I think, about vanity and the physical and stuff. And it's like vanity is kind of a bad word. You know what I mean? Like vanity, it's a bad word. But the physical and the mental and emotional are so connected. I mean, like if you get somebody just standing up straight, they're going to approach the world differently because it's going to affect their mental attitude. I mean, like Tony Robbins talks a lot about physiology uh, influencing your psychology, and I think he's right because you walk into a room and you're holding yourself up and you're standing up straight, like chest out. You're gonna address that room differently, as if your neck's all crooked and your back's all down, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with like how you feel about your physical appearance, like you were saying, wrinkles or hair. It's the same thing. Like it, no matter how much we try to tell ourselves, like, oh, it doesn't matter. And ultimately, maybe it doesn't. But the truth is, it affects how we look at ourselves. Like you put on a slamming suit or a nice jacket and some good shoes, and you walk out into the world, you're like, oh yeah, it's happening. It's on. Or you wear the same like sweat clothes you've been wearing all weekend. You're not really gonna go and like tackle the world in that outfit.
Yeah, Mariah, I'll tell you a funny story that kind of probably jumped out to me whenever we started kind of communicating about doing this podcast. One of
Cool.
my favorite teachers that I've ever had, Mr. Bouillon, was my eighth grade math teacher. And
Uh-huh.
on the first test that he would give the test out, everybody sitting there focusing, and he would take his toupee off. No one knew until this point. And he would
Uh-huh.
walk around the classroom without his toupee on. Hey, you have any questions? No? Okay. And he'd just keep on going until people started to notice, and the whole class would just bust out laughing. And he would say, look, for me, I don't even care. I'll walk up and show somebody, but I feel better with it on as how I see myself in the world. So he was like, when I go out, I put my shoes on, I put my jacket on, I put my hair on, and I go into the world.
Sure.
So as soon as we started, it was something that he was like, I'm not doing this for other people. I'm doing this
Yeah.
for me because I feel better communicating and being in the world with it. And I don't care if they know that's not why I'm doing it. I'm not trying to hide it. It just makes me feel better and function better. And if we can tap into that and give that to people, how many other downstream effects do they tap into? How many other positive things, the conversation they might not have had, the standing up and asking the question they might not have asked. Like, it's not a tiny thing that we talk about. It's something that can have ripple effects that reach pretty far.
There, that's so good. That's so good, and it's so true because it's 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 all about you and your own perception of yourself. And the stronger that you are as a person, the better you're going to do in the world. And like if we had a world of people who are just strong, confident, outgoing individuals, they're going to affect their families, their communities, their neighbors, their churches, their government. They're going to affect everything in a positive light, and they're going to bring it all up. So so it is like I like we are, as a company, as my company over here, we are addressing hair loss, but it's so much bigger because if we can make that little change in somebody's life, that little change is going to affect, you know, their spouse. their husband, their wife, their kid, their neighbor, and it's going to trickle, like you said, it's going to trickle out, and it's going to have a wave effect of positiveness because, I mean, the truth is people are good, people at the core are good. And the stronger you can make them, the more that good is going to be released out, you know?
So good. Let's dive in a little bit into kind of the factors related to hair growth. Um,
Mhm.
let's dive into the factors related to hair growth and kind of what that process looks like for people. I'd love to hear and kind of go through at least a little bit, and then maybe we can kind of talk about the different versions of hair loss a little bit.
Yeah, totally, totally. Well, I mean, there's different stages of hair. There's a resting, a shedding, and a growth phase. And that's just that's natural part of life in all mammals. Everything that has hair has that phase. So like when people are shedding and stuff, it's actually part of the cycle. Um, it's
So
when it
that's
gets
whenever the hair like that you have is either coming out of the follicle or you're losing it.
yeah, yeah, because what happens is the the follicle starts to grow and then it stops growing at a certain point. So that's the growth phase. And then what happens is slowly the the hair starts pushing out. So it releases from the follicle and it pushes out. So this is technically the resting phase. So it's no longer growing, but now it's just sitting there and slowly it's pushing out, pushing out, pushing out, and then it falls out, and then the follicle starts again. And that's the whole process of hair growth. Now, so like it's normal to see hair in the shower or on the brush or on the pillow. That's normal. But it's when it gets to be excessive, beyond normal, that there's something going on. Now, the mechanics of what's happening are, I think they're pretty interesting, and they're a lot simpler than people think. Now, this is the broad picture. This is the majority of hair loss, which is just standard male pattern baldness or female pattern baldness, because there's many causes. There's hormonal changes like menopause, pregnancy. There's stress. Stress is a huge factor. There's underlying medical conditions. There's environmental things. There's a bunch of different things, but the main one is what I'm going to explain. So when your body breaks down testosterone, testosterone is ultimately the culprit here. So when your body breaks down testosterone, it creates a byproduct. And testosterone is just the male hormone, is testosterone. It creates a byproduct. And that byproduct is called dihydrotestosterone, but everyone just calls it DHT for short.
Yep.
And this is just excreted through your body. It's not a big deal. It's just excreted. However, when it passes by your follicles, on our follicles we have receptor sites, which for a visual would be a little pothole. So the follicles, they have these little potholes on them. Now, this is interesting. That is the inherited trait in hair loss. When people say hair loss is genetic, it's not the actual hair loss that's genetic. It's these little potholes on the follicle that you inherit. So now, as the DHT passes by, it gets stuck in these potholes. And as it gets stuck, it cuts off a little bit of the blood flow. And over time, as more and more gets stuck, it cuts off more and more blood flow, and the follicle starts to get weaker and weaker, and then it eventually dies. And that's the basic mechanics there. And this is why men will experience it earlier than women because they have more testosterone. So they're creating more of this DHT, whereas women will still have those little potholes, but they have less testosterone in their bodies. So there's just less DHT to latch on, which is why they'll see hair loss later in life. Or if they go through a major hormonal change like childbirth or pregnancy where there's spikes in testosterone, they will notice an increase in shedding and hair loss because they're producing more testosterone, and that's the byproduct. DHT is getting produced and it's latching on there.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's why when we look at, kind of the side effects of like minoxidil or finasteride or any of those things, they are going after that DHT in an interesting way, correct?
Well, it's no, it's a little bit different. Like minoxidil is a stimulant. So what minoxidil is not addressing the DHT problem. Uh, Minoxidil is forcing blood past the DHT into the follicle.
Gotcha.
Like that's its main mechanism, which is why, I mean, it doesn't have a very high success rate.
Right.
But for those people that it does work for, they'll see a result quicker than they will with like a natural product because it's a stimulant that's artificially forcing blood to the follicle. The problem is, besides the side effects, the problem is that your body's dependent on the drug forcing the blood to the molecule, so to the follicle. So once you stop taking it, that blood is no longer being delivered and all your results disappear. They instantly go away.
Yeah, that's one of the questions. Whenever I started kind of going down into this, and you've already kind of touched on it, is that is our primary solution a blood flow solution or a hormone solution? It sounds to me like, based on your explanation of what happens, that it's a little bit of both. That if
Mm,
we could, in a perfect situation, continue getting blood flow into the hair follicle,
mm.
while we're improving kind of the clearance of some of the hormone byproducts. That's our perfect solution.
Kind of yes and kind of no. And the reason why I say that is because I don't believe you should ever mess with your hormones. I think our bodies are these incredible mechanisms that are beyond our ultimate comprehension, and everything is connected. You know, we don't know how synergistically our bodies work, but it's 100% connected. So when you start messing with a hormone, the effects are going to be everywhere. They're just going to be everywhere because it's all connected. So like, okay, let's give you a little backstory, and then I'll catch up to where your question. So how this whole thing started is my whole family has hair loss. The men in my family are bald. I'm happy to have what I have because I should be slick, shiny bald at this point in my life. Um, but my father was losing his hair. And our whole family's philosophy has always been like vitamins, nutrition, exercise, homeopathic remedies. We've always approached that for all of our ailments and for our strength and for whatever we need. That's how we approached our life. But when my father started losing his hair, there wasn't a lot out there. Like there was like, rub onions on your hair or, things like this, but there wasn't anything like viable other than, the minoxidils, the Rogaines, weird hormone replacement surgery or injections, like weird and he started trying this stuff and he got very sick. His body started hurting. He actually started developing breasts, and it was like, okay, no, this is not the path. And my mom is Italian, and she, through a family connection, she found out this lab in the Lake Como area of Italy that was doing some pretty exciting things in terms of helping the DHT come off the follicle. And so we, got some through that connection, and it started working. And then eventually we became the, distributors in the United States for it. But the thing is it was successfully getting the DHT off the follicle. Because once the DHT comes off, the blood will start flowing back to the follicle. But the issue that we were having was that it wasn't coming back fast enough and strong enough. And we really, we want to produce something that's gonna blow people's socks off, you know? And what we had was great and it was working, but it wasn't quite there. It was like it was good, but we just knew like how could it be better? How could it be better? And so we started researching like the medical journals that were out, all around the world because the minoxidils, finasteride, Rogaines, those were all made in the 70s. And so we're like something science didn't take a nap on hair loss and thinning hair from 1970, to 2009 when we started doing all this. So we started researching, we started finding all these really, really exciting developments that were coming out in lab studies, like with stem cells, with probiotics, with amino acid complexes, with peptides, all these incredible, like all these. There was something like botanical extracts that were just like that were working. They were like in lab studies working. So we were in California, and we found a lab here in California, and we're like, okay, so we have it's a big FDA lab that specializes in like natural formulations, but on a very scientific level. And so we're like, we have all these ingredients, and they're incredible. Look at all these studies. We want to source these and find a way to put them in one product, all of them in one product. And we've always been the family like, let's make a shake. Let's put everything in it, you know? Um, so we took that approach. Everything goes in it, and but the key was that they had to be at the same clinical strengths that was producing the results in the labs. That just had to work that way. And it took a couple years, but we eventually did it, and that's been our approach since releasing that first product, More Hair Naturally 9. That's been our approach to developing all the other products, was like what's out there that's producing the results that we want to achieve, and then how do we put them into a product to make that work. Now back to your question about like the perfect hormone versus blood flow question. um, so the goal on our end, what we feel is the best way to go about it. The goal is to get the DHT off the follicle, because this doesn't mess with your hormone levels. Um, I don't know like the complete ramifications of DHT in the body, but the idea of altering your testosterone or trying to alter your DHT levels, I feel like there's ramifications that are not worth um, doing on a guinea pig basis. You know what I mean? I should say.
Certainly.
So our goal is to get the DHT off the follicle so the blood can start flowing back to the follicle naturally. And then we start rebuilding that follicle with stem cells, probiotics, and amino acids. So we get the blood flowing back to it, and then we're rebuilding it. Also, we're fortifying that rebuilding.
So let's start with the things that can actually get DHT off of it. What's the mechanism around that?
Well, in we what we're finding for us is that we're using a very high grade medical hyaluronic acid, which is found in your joints, in your eyeballs. A lot of face creams have it as well, because it's a very moisturizing substance. And we're finding that has the ability to coat the follicle enough that it's just it makes the molecules just slide off.
Yeah, I've had quite a few patients who have used a really good form of collagen when we're
Mhm.
using that to treat joints. Treat joints or soft tissue injuries. We need those building blocks if we're doing some of these kind of regenerative therapies. And so we tell a lot of them, get on a really good collagen. And
Yeah.
quite a few of them have come back, and some of the better collagen companies, probably because of the data on hyaluronic acid, have started adding that into their collagen. And
Yeah.
quite a few will come back and like, look, like I'm filling in up here. It looks better than it used to.
Yeah, it's great. We don't currently offer any sort of supplements, but we do recommend that, like, get a good collagen supplement. Not only is it going to help with your hair, but it's going to help with your joints. It's going to help in general. We always recommend, you know, anything that you're doing positively to change your life is a good call. So like if you're proactively, taking vitamins to make your life better, doing shakes to make your life better, exercising to make your life better, and all that stuff is great because it's putting you back in control of your body and you back in control of your life. And that's like it's going to be a ripple effect, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
When you make a positive choice, get a good result, you're going to have confidence to make more positive choices and get more good results.
And it's interesting, and maybe it's something we can touch on a little bit later. But when you start digging into the research on inflammation, on stress,
Yeah,
a lot of those have quite negative effects on hair quality, hair color, all of that stuff. So, doing
absolutely.
those little small things right makes a big difference if you're adding that layer on
You
top of some of the treatments, right?
Inflammation's a big deal. Inflammation's a big deal. So stress. Both of them are big factors. The reason I didn't jump into them first is because they're not like the all-encompassing factor, but they're major factors for
So if
sure.
we get the DHT off, so we kind of smother that hair follicle in the hyaluronic acid and we are able to get DHT off, and now we're looking at kind of restoring health and blood flow to that. What's the best compounds that y'all are looking at in terms of research? I know you kind of mentioned peptides. Let's get into some of those different kind of molecules that can make the change in blood flow to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're finding that like we're finding that these like because the peptides are amino acid complexes and they're these specific combinations of like of different elements that we're finding are getting the results in the labs. Like this is really how we're doing it. Like I'm not I, like when we start researching, we're researching like the results. We're researching first. We always make sure it's natural, element based or botanical based, and then we're searching out the results. So I'm not like searching in like in element books, saying what if we what if we put this in it? What if we put that? I'm letting the scientists in the lab do that, and then seeing their results and being okay. That's a result we want. So how do we, get that product from them and put it in ours?
Yeah. Nice. So, so is that peptides? Is that in
Yeah.
that category?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. For sure. For
Nice.
sure. Yeah.
So, and I've done a decent amount of this, and I found it interesting when we were looking at skin health. And
Hmm.
this kind of came from like a family thing that GHK copper was a really good peptide that could actually get absorbed transdermally, that could go through
Yeah.
the skin if somebody was putting that on there and improve the health of basically your what top few layers of skin and blood flow and regeneration in that. Does that play a role in this?
We have copper in all of our products. And, well, not, I take it back. Not all our products. We have copper in the two products that focus on thinning hair. And we have a new product coming out that will also have copper in for that exact reason. It's a wonderful element in terms of regenerative properties and blood flow, and it's actually an essential element in hair growth as well.
So in those situations, what we would want to do is do like a hyaluronic acid, and we'd want to kind of tack on top of it like a GHK copper peptide that would get absorbed through the skin to help with the blood flow component.
Yeah, essentially, um, I mean that's kind of what's kind of been our approach is kind of that, like, but we're also like, what else? What other elements? What other elements can we get into it? What other elements can we get into? So we're really like we were the first company to introduce the topical application of stem cells, and each of our products has at least three, if not more, that are all specifically designed to achieve the goal of that specific product. So we definitely take that like that approach of like, yeah, we mix it all together and we put it on. That's my approach. That's how I talk to my lab. Let's mix it all together and put it on. Go
So
for it.
how do you
Figure
get?
it out.
I'm interested in this. Let's talk about the stem cell component. How do you get
Yeah.
that in? Is that an injection? Is that topical? And
No.
then is that different than like the typical stem cells that we think of when we're talking about treating like a joint or a tendon?
Yeah. Yeah. It's different. So it's topical. They're all topical. Um, and I'm not a stem cell expert. I will say that going into it. I know the stem cells that we use, but in terms of the whole stem cell world, I'm not an expert. I do know that all our stem cells are botanical, except for one. We use an adipose-derived stem cell, which is comes from adults 18 to 35 from fat cells. It's a donated thing like a plasma or blood. And the reason why we use that's the only human one, and the reason why we had to really figure out like, do we want that? Because there's so much stigma and controversy around human stem cells. But so we're like, do we want to even like open that can of worms, even though this is like from adults, it's donated, it's from fat cells, it's not invasive, it's not, but every single study was just showing crazy results with this particular stem cell on the hair follicle. It just was like, I mean, if you Google adipose-derived stem cells and hair loss, the studies that come up and they're government studies. They're not like independent. These are government studies that come up are just really, really impressive. So we were like, we got to include this one because it seems so great and no one's using it. Now people are starting to, but it's not in any products. Now it is different from though, but this is very different from like stem cells they're using to rebuild like collagen or even hearts I've heard, and
Yeah.
this is very or spinal injuries. It's a very different. These are topical, and all the other ones are botanical, and again taken for their effect on the scalp and the hair.
I love that. The in my practice, everyone who listens to this kind of knows that one of the things that we'll do is we'll take data that one thing works, and we'll start looking at like what little things can we add in or layer on top
Yeah.
that exponentially improve the benefits of that therapy or that kind of method of treatment or whatever it might be. And so we do a lot of this kind of layering type treatment where it's like, let's check the box for blood flow so that we can get the nutrient. Well, we need to make sure the nutrients and the healing agents are in there, and then the
Mhm.
blood flow is better so it actually gets delivered. Well, now we need to make sure the cells are functioning well if they get all this nutrient. So we need to check that box and just kind of go down and layer on these things. It sounds like y'all have done a lot of that from the hair growth standpoint, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, exactly. It all comes back to that like throw it all in the shake. Like you're making the shake and you got like, oh, there's a powder, let's put some of that. Oh, I got some ground mushrooms, let's put that in. Oh, there's some flax seeds, let's put those in.
So what are
It's
some of
all
those other things when you were talking about it earlier? So we've got kind of like, let's get the hyaluronic acid, let's get some of the stem cells and peptides to
Mhm.
regenerate some health around the follicle. What are
Right.
some of the things that people could kind of do in terms of nutrients? You see a lot of these things, biotin, iron, zinc, that play some role in this. Is there some other things that people miss a lot in terms of like what is in their normal, kind of diet or supplement regimen that can actually move the needle?
Yeah, that's a great question because you know, it's all synergistically tied together. Vitamins and diet are absolutely imperative and are going to help, but they're not going to address the DHT.
Yeah.
So they're very different. So in order for healthy hair and healthy growth and healthy skin and healthy scalp, yeah, you definitely want to do diets, that like certain foods that are good for that are like, you know, like like fatty fishes with omega-3s. Like a salmon is really good for that. The only problem with that is that mercury is terrible for it. Mercury's terrible because it kills all the zinc in your body. It's terrible for your body. It's terrible for your hair. So there's the only like catch on that. But the the fats in fish, the omega-3s are great. Then like there's like yams are really good. The vitamin A in the yams are great. Liver is actually very good as well because high in iron. Iron's really good. Then like the fats from nuts, from spinach, not fats from spinach, but spinach is really good as
Yeah.
well. You know,
You've given
so
me kind of an interesting thought, and I'd love to get if you have some thoughts on it. So we have done, kind of hair mineral analysis for patients just to get tissue
uh,
health quality.
yeah,
And a lot of times we'll go through and we're looking at all the ratios, a lot of what we've just talked about, and we'll give them some ideas of maybe what they should do to get healthier. But I've never quite thought about it I mean, we're testing the hair. I've never quite
right.
thought about it that gives us a really good idea of do you have the right things to keep healthy hair to improve the health of your hair follicles. Have y'all looked at any of the data on any of that? Do y'all recommend getting those tested if you're starting this?
We have never looked at that data, but it's interesting that you say that. I've never put the two together, but I do know. I have done that before where they take your hair and they do like tests from it before. But that's a really interesting point. I've never like kind of put the two together.
Me neither.
If you,
I'll
yeah.
be digging into that shortly. I've got a few people who I know we already have their tests that do have some thinning that we may want to have some conversations with after. Like you said, I think it's still all like what boxes are checked. We have to address the DHT component.
Mhm.
Then we need to start looking at blood flow. Then we need to start looking at probably regeneration, and then at some point, I would imagine there's a maintenance thing right there. If you've checked all these boxes and someone's doing this, there and you have the propensity for DHT grabbing on, what does that maintenance cycle look like? How do we keep all that going on?
Absolutely. Well, we here's our approach at More Hair Naturally. What we our idea is we don't we our idea is to get the DHT off the follicle, get the blood flowing back to it, and then get you off the program. And then since you're constantly producing DHT, it's not going to latch back on for a while, but it will eventually come back. But when it does, if you get it early enough, you just do like a little refresher program. You don't have to do it hardcore. Now, it's a little tricky because not everyone can be helped. You know, if like your hair is shiny bald, if your scalp is shiny bald, that's an indication the follicles have died. And if a follicle has died, there's nothing that can be done about it. And a lot of people when their hair is thinning, there are dead follicles in there already. So no one's going to get 100% of their hair back. Someone who's 50 who starts using our program, they're not going to look like they looked when they were, 15. That's just never going to happen. So so the results are a little slow. It's like a 3 to 6 month, depending on where you're at before you see any kind of results because it's a healing property. So we're trying to get the DHT off the follicle, blood flowing back, rebuilding it, and that just takes time. It takes time. The body takes time to heal. It just does. So depending on how far gone someone is, they might not see results till the 6, 7 month. But then they'll start to see a real change. I mean, you'll notice results in the first month. People do. You'll notice your hair looks better, your scalp feels better. You'll start to notice change, but you're not going to see any kind of the results that you're like looking for in that until that benchmark. But it's an ongoing thing. It's not a lifetime usage, but it is something that people do, revisit. So we'll have clients who they'll go aggressive with us for about a year because, they'll be like 50, 60, lost a lot of hair. So it's a big process to like get it back. But then after the year, they'll cut back. And then after that, they'll just stop. And then they'll like, call us in like, 3, 4, 5 years and be like, hey, I want to get a little program, maybe once a week, just because it's so easy to apply it. We did it like that intentionally because people's lifestyles are their lifestyles, and it's hard to break a routine. I mean, I'm sure you ask people to do certain exercises or certain something, and it's hard for them to, fit it in or commit and do it all the time. So we in order for someone to get the results, they have to use it. Like for you, if someone wants to heal their body, they have to do the steps. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So we made it very easy. It takes 30 seconds to apply. It's water based. It's not greasy, oily. So you just massage it in. You're good to go. It dries. So we made it very simple, so that people can put it into routine, so they can actually use it and get the results. But
Talk, Talking about some of the like layering stuff, and I agree. There is a part of everything. It's like I find there's two levels of or two really beneficial ways of adding something like this. There's the all-in model of like this is your focus. If other things have to come off for this, 6 to 12 months, this is all that we care about. And I find people
right,
do really well with that, whether that's getting healthy or weight loss, fitness, anything like that. And then there's like the toe in the water approach. Like, no
right,
matter what, do 2 to 5 minutes or for this 30 seconds, like do that, but do it every single day. And it's just that tiny little bite. I feel
right.
like if we end up in between, that's where we end up in trouble, where we'll do it for a few weeks and then everything kind of falls off. But
Yeah.
talking about adding things that make this stuff more effective, some of these like kind of newer like biotech things that have shown benefits in cell health and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, what about putting some of those on top when we're looking at infrared laser therapy? I'd love to know your thoughts on the derma rollers. I see a lot of that stuff out.
Yeah.
When you start researching some of these things. We use
Sure.
PEMF in the clinic, which is a vascular therapy that helps blood flow.
Uh-huh.
Have y'all looked at or had patients, I'm sure, clients who have
Yeah.
added those on top of what y'all's treatments are?
Yeah. Absolutely. We have a lot of clients who use the laser, and the laser is good. The laser is okay. We found it. Uh, we haven't spoke because we talk to so many people. So a lot of our information on results from products is anecdotal because we talk to so many people. So the lasers does seem to be okay. People seem to be pretty happy with it, and a lot of people use the laser in conjunction with our products. The derma roller, um, it's an interesting product because people seem to really like it, and the theory behind it seems pretty good. Um, I mean, people have to be careful because we definitely have clients who have gone a little aggressive with it and have hurt themselves.
Let's
So
explain that a little bit. What a derma roller is, if people are kind of new to this world.
it's essentially a ball with a bunch of needles on it. And it's like a roller with a bunch of needles, and you roll it along the scalp. And the idea is that it improves blood circulation. Like that's the concept behind it. Um, and it seems okay. We have because we have a lot of clients that like to use it with our products. They'll do the derma roller and then they'll put our products on because it kind of opens up the scalp a little bit, gets the blood flowing, and then they'll apply it. Um, and they seem happy with it. I personally uh, don't necessarily recommend it just based on the fact that it is needles, and I don't want someone to hurt themselves based off a recommendation that I've given them.
Yeah.
But if it's used correctly and gently and just like a couple times a week, it seems to do what it's supposed to do, which is increase the blood circulation.
Nice. Yeah, I think there would be kind of a being very, very careful in terms of like cleaning and doing a lot of that stuff because it is
Yeah.
it's an invasive technique. You are poking little holes even though they're very tiny.
Mhm.
So you could be, I guess, inviting an extra little risk in there, though small, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of my take on it. But like I said, it does seem to do what it says it's going to do. It does increase the blood circulation for sure. It does do that. Um, and people seem to enjoy using it. So I think it's okay. I think it's an all right. I think it's all right product. I don't know if standalone on its own, I wouldn't suggest it in terms of like a real remedy that's going to produce like major visible results. But I think used in conjunction, I think it's viable for sure.
Yeah, I often think whenever we're doing this, like kind of going back to our new habits, is like if you're going to go all in for a year, what would the different stack look like? Like you're changing a little bit of the diet, making sure you're on a low inflammatory diet.
Yeah.
Starting to add like a product like y'all's, and you're doing that, daily. Is it daily? Is it twice daily? What's the
It's either depending on how where you're at, it's either twice daily because we have two different main products for addressing the thinning hair situation. One is the first one I told you about that handles the DHT and the fortifying the follicle itself. The other one addresses one of the things we found when the hair starts to get thin, the growth cycle starts to get shorter and shorter as the hair gets thinner and thinner. So, we talked about the cycles in the beginning. So the growth cycle starts to get shorter, which is why a lot of people, when their hair starts to get thin, they can't grow it long. It's because the growth cycle is just too short. So what this does, this other product, what it does is it's using different stem cells and different um, botanical extracts. It addresses the component parts of the hair and helps elongate that growth cycle. So on one end, we're saying we're rebuilding, and on the other end, we're saying, okay, now it's time to grow. And then it also completely rebalances the microbiome of the scalp because if your hair's thin, any kind of non-optimum scalp condition is going to impede growth. So, any sort of oiliness, itchiness, flakiness, dryness, anything like that. And we found that with like the probiotic complexes, it's fairly easy to handle those conditions.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point too. Whenever you're using some of these things, you're doing a scalp treatment, right? So making sure
Yeah,
that they get it to the scalp, yeah, and really get it in there. Do y'all recommend them kind of like massaging that in, or
absolutely. In all the instructions, we make sure we always say it's not a hairspray. You're gonna waste it if you treat it as a hairspray. The goal is to get it directly to the scalp. So it's a little airless pump bottle. And so it's like a little squirt bottle, and you hold it as close to the scalp as possible in those thinning areas. You spray just enough to saturate, massage it in, and then you're good to go.
Uh, and then if we're continuing to build out our like perfect year, I remember reading some research. I don't know if you've kind of dug into this on uh, people who were using sauna and noticing improvements in hair loss. And I don't remember if it was a reversal or if it just slowed the progression of hair loss. But obviously we know that sauna does quite a bit in terms of blood flow, and you do get a good bit of kind of the detoxification effects, at least in certain minerals. I know that I almost hate even saying like detox because it's such a damaged word, but it
It
actually
is.
does
It is.
happen in sauna in some level.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know. I haven't actually researched. Are you talking about like hot cold sauna or just hot sauna, just sweating it out kind of sauna?
If I remember, it was just sauna use. I don't remember if they did if they did contrast therapy. But that's a good point. We do whole body cryotherapy in my office, and like
Oh,
we
that's
have the
great. I've never done it,
true.
but I always want to. I think about it. I've
If
never done it, but I'm like,
if you're
oh,
down in Louisiana, let me know, Mariah. We'll get you in there, man.
yeah,
But we have a true full body cryo chamber where you're in there and it's a natural air, so you're breathing it. So your head's in it, your the top of your
wow,
head's in it. And so for a lot of our patients who are bald, the top of their head or they have thinning hair gets very cold. And so we give them a little skull cap just to make it tolerable. What are your thoughts on the anti-inflammatory effects? Should we be telling them like, hey, actually leave it off for a little while and then pop that on because that cold effect stimulates a repair response?
yeah. I don't know. What you're saying sounds good, but I don't know. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds good. You
Yeah.
know, but like inflammation is a big deal in every aspect of human health, in every aspect of human health. So anything that you can do to address or curtail or reduce, that condition is so vitally important to do.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier we were talking about inflammation, and you mentioned like stress effects on this. What actually happens with stress when in terms of how it affects our hair? What's going on inside the body that affects negatively either hair growth or hair color? I know that's something that you see a lot in the data.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't have the full picture on this. There's people that will know how to answer that question much better than I do. But what I can say on it is that it's two things. One is it distorts your hormone levels. One, and then because it's like pushing adrenaline and pushing all these hormones through your body that are just throwing it all out of order.
Yeah,
So
cortisol
that's
spikes,
one.
all of these negatives. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also it has to do with when your body goes into that mode, how your body handles and absorbs nutrition changes. So you're no longer getting the proper nutrition that you need because your body is not absorbing correctly because it's in panic, it's in fight mode, and it's neglecting all of its normal functions because it's just throwing you into pure like survival mode. So I
Yeah,
think I think
you give me
that's
kind of the thought. I've never really dug into it, but when we do get into that fight or flight, we certainly see blood flow pattern in the body change because your body's
yeah.
trying to do survival. And looking at some of the research in hair color, I've seen that when stress decreases,
Mhm.
people will actually see a lessening in the amount of gray hair that they have. And I wonder if
Sure.
that's just purely, we've removed this like blood flow, restriction that was from a hormonal, from that increased sympathetic nervous system stimulation.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I have heard that as well, what you talked about, but I don't actually know the mechanics behind it.
Talking about that, when if somebody like so with the hair color thing with graying, can we use the same idea to improve hair color? If somebody has, hey, I'm starting to get gray hair, what would y'all do for that?
You know, what's funny is we've just recently sort of started looking into that. We've had like our nothing we have is designed to address gray hair. However, for some reason, we have had clients tell us that like, my gray hair is going away. Um, but I don't know why. I don't know if that's because of us. I don't know if that's because their lifestyle's changing. I actually don't know why, but we've had multiple clients tell us, and we always say that's awesome. Like that's not part of like our our intention in helping you here, but we're so glad that that's happening for you as well.
Nice. Yeah, it was such an interesting thing when you start looking at that. I think everything around it, like how the hair grows, how it changes color, is such a fascinating thing because it's this little area of human physiology that doesn't really get taught or talked about a whole lot. But as I was looking at that, it was very interesting that we get hydrogen peroxide production at the hair follicle level, and if that stuff's not getting cleared out, then people get gray hair. One of the amazing supplements that we've seen in terms of just keeping the body healthy is glutathione.
Oh yeah.
And it appears that if you have proper levels of glutathione, you should clear out that hydrogen peroxide better and keep those levels down and minimize gray hair. But it's a very fascinating kind of area of I guess research that doesn't really
Mhm.
get spread. So I love that you're putting some of this stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah, glutathione is great. That's it's great. Um, yeah, I mean, the coloring has to do with like there's it's a combination of like melatonin and zinc apparently has zinc, which is a vital element in hair growth. Um, I just read something on it recently. And it was interesting because it was from I follow a lot of alternative medicines. I'm very interested in that aspect of healing, as if you are as well. Um, and so I was I read this little article on how during COVID, a lot of people started upping their zinc intake and started also seeing a lot more gray hair. And there was a correlation between the massive amounts of extra zinc and the color of the hair. And they found that when they people start bringing their zinc back to normal levels again, the gray that happened while they were like spiking it during COVID started decreasing and coming back down.
That's fascinating because you would think, yeah, that's interesting. Like, on some level, you would start to think that having, proper levels of zinc would be very important to, maintaining the hair health.
It
Um,
is. It is. Though. Everything says that. Everything says that having the proper levels is very important to maintaining hair health. It's a very important element in hair growth and healthy hair.
right.
I think it's the excessive. I think it's
Yeah.
the excessive amount
Yeah,
that is causing.
yeah, and I know we're kind of creating some questions for the listeners, but I love it. Like then that goes back. I'm like, all right, so should like if you're on this journey, should every 6 months we do a hair mineral analysis and just make sure that you're staying in your lane, that we're not going over in some of these things or going under in some of them. Like let's make sure that while you're treating it, like you're talking about, and you're adding these extra kind of, supplemental nutrients, that we're not going too low or too high with it. I think that would be a very fun study to look at.
Yeah. So I mean, having the right balance of anything is important. Like an excessive amount of a good thing is always bad, you know. So having the proper balance is the goal. It's never the goal is never to have like too much or an excessive amount. The goal is to have the right amount for your body. And
If someone, and you kind of mentioned this earlier in terms of like the earlier you address the hair follicle health, the better it's going to be. If someone knows, they're listening to this and they're like, I'm 25 and know my dad had hair loss. I know my grandfather had hair loss. What would it look like for them? I mean, I know they should start doing something. Is
yeah,
that kind of a maintenance regimen that they should start fairly early, and maybe they're not doing it twice a day? What's that look like? What's your recommendation for somebody like that?
yeah, it's we don't have a lot of clients like that. We do have a handful though. I think partially is that we're very expensive. Our ingredients are expensive, and we price as low as we can, but it's pricey. So we do have a healthy amount of people in their late 20s to early 30s that are have that thought of like everyone's losing their hair. I don't want to. I want to maintain. For them it's actually a very easy thing. They'll get like one or two bottles. They'll apply it twice a week, maybe once a week. It lasts for like 4 or 5 months. So it's not for them. It's not really a big investment because it'll last half a year. And they just do it 2 3 times a week. you know, Super, super easy. Usually the clients we get are people in panic mode. You know, I've been losing for 15 years. I've been losing for 20 years. Or it's a woman who's like, I've been losing. Women address it. Women are easier to help because they address it sooner. Men procrastinate. Men wait and wait and wait, and then by the time they call us, it's like, okay, we got a lot of work to do. It's going to be a commitment to do this. We can help you, but it's going to be a commitment. Women, they're like, it's been a month. I'm freaking out. Or like, okay, let's get you started. We can help you. It's not going to be that long. It's not going to be a big thing because you're catching it super early. You
So
know?
if you're listening to this and your wife's telling you you're starting to get a little spot, call
Yeah.
Mariah.
Call More Hair Naturally. MoreHairNaturally.com. Go to our website. Check it out.
So if you were setting up kind of the perfect regimen, meaning lifestyle, extra activities,
Mhm.
treatment regimen for somebody who's listening to this, if we were going to put all this in like, your kind of long elevator ride pitch of, hey, this is what it should look like over the next year. Let's go through that. What's the kind of top 5 or 10 recommendations for somebody like that?
Okay. Use our products. So so the way you imply you integrate more naturally into your routine is um, you take a shower. If you shower that morning, you take a shower, get out, towel dry your hair, apply one bottle just to the thinning areas of scalp, massage it in for 30 seconds, go on your day. In the evening, apply the other bottle. If you're using hairstyling products, you do your hairstyling products, and then in the evening, you apply both bottles, one after the other. The reason is because sometimes hairstyling products have harsh chemicals that can potentially affect the stem cells. And so we just say, well, let's just separate it out. You'd want to de stress. Any activity that helps you, that you can do every day to help you just de stress a little bit, great. Be it exercise, be it, quietly reading, be it meditation, be it a walk, whatever you can do to kind of de-stress a little bit is imperative. Diet, super important. Diet, like if you can cut out sugars, like refined sugar and like processed food, and if you could cut out like any kind of any kind of processed food, like I know breads are kind of hard for people to cut out, but if you could get bread that just has flour, water, salt, yeast, keep it at that if you're going to have bread. Just cut out all that stuff because all that stuff is going to negatively affect how your system processes nutrients, and it's going to affect your hair and everything else too. We um, A lot of people are on specialty diets, which are great. Any diet that's making your body feel better is good for your body. You know what I mean? Like some people are can't do vegan, some people thrive as vegans. Some people are great keto, some people can't. But when you do these diets, a lot of times they do affect, like, for whatever. Keto is awful. Part of keto is hair loss, essentially. I mean, that's a pretty broad statement, but keto is very hard on the hair for whatever reason, because keto sounds in theory like a great diet, and I think it is for a lot of people. However, just knowing that, say, okay, well, how can I, like, keep my keto diet and supplement, you know, to make sure I'm not, having a side effect of hair loss due to my keto diet. So it's sort of being aware in that aspect. We do exercise is important. Moving your body. I should say moving your body is important. That's at the base. You should be moving your body every day, having motion going through your body. I'm a culprit of that too. I sit in front of the computer endlessly day after day. But moving your body is so important for all your functions, because it all is going to affect your hair, but it's going to affect everything. It's not just that.
Yeah, I
Those
feel
are
like I would have I think you just kind of nailed it, and it might be that some of that is that a proxy for just overall wellness, right?
Yeah,
If
totally,
um,
totally.
and then if my patients are doing this, I'd be like, look, let's come and have you sit under the infrared, a couple times a week. If you're going hard at this, let's do that, and
Yeah,
get as much cell activation in there so that your body can
yeah.
actually put these stem cells to use. Do anything you can for blood flow, right?
Anything you can for blood flow. Blood flow is great. Anything you can, any like natural thing you, yeah, yeah. But anything you can for blood flow is great.
I love it. Anything
Yes.
else that they should throw on the treatment routine?
Uh, Joy. Just joy. Joy. Look for joy in your life. Do stuff that makes you happy at least once a day. Do something that takes you out of your head, takes you out of your thoughts and gives you some sort of joy, because that's gonna change everything.
Well, and I think that kind of makes it to where, hey, I'm doing all this, but I'm grateful for where I'm at and my ability to go through some of these things. So, um, I love it, Mariah. Thank you so much for what y'all are doing for people, for y'all's passion. The passion for this and helping people comes through, and I think y'all are more than just doing kind of hair changes. You're really kind of the passion for changing someone's life and changing how they can show up in the world comes through a lot in your company and the way that you speak about it. So I really appreciate the way y'all care for people. Where can people find more about you? Where can they follow y'all on social? Where can they get on your website and get some of the product?
Yeah, it's More Hair Naturally, morehairnaturally.com. And on our website, if you go to morehairnaturally.com, there's a phone number. There are phone numbers everywhere on the website. A phone number everywhere. Have it plastered everywhere. And the reason why is is we like to talk to people, because the thing about hair loss is it's different for everybody. Thinning hair is different for everybody, and so someone might need just a small program and a simple regimen, and someone might need an aggressive, strong program and a strong regimen. So we like to tailor it to people, and we like to talk to people, and we like to help people out. I have a team here, and that's all they do. Their job is just to help people understand more about what's happening with their hair. We answer any questions they might have about their situation. We explain the mechanics of their particular hair loss as the best we can, and we work to track down the root cause, because it might be a diet thing. Maybe they don't need our products. Maybe it is a diet thing. maybe it's something else, but it's, and it's free to call and talk to us and stuff. So we always like to encourage that. Not everyone likes to jump on the phone and they just want to buy products, and I'm good at that. That's great too. Just morehairnatural.com, and just, yeah, it's all there.
Do y'all have social? Do y'all have people tag
Yeah,
y'all
we
and
do.
doing some before and after
Yeah,
stuff?
it's more hair naturally in Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. More hair slash more hair naturally. They're all more hair naturally.
Nice. Yeah, we'll tag all of that, but that should be easy for all of y'all to find.
Yeah,
Mariah, we ask all of our guests if you can tell people to do one thing today to get a little bit healthier. What is that?
it's a great question. Honestly, find joy, man. Find joy, because when you're happy and you're out of your head and you're out of your space and your tensions away from you and on something else that's making you happy, when you're giving your attention to someone else, to something else, everything's better. It's like a weird miracle. I've had fevers and then been thrown into a situation where all my attention is suddenly off me and it's on something great, and all of a sudden I forget I have a fever. I forget I'm sick. It's like you're not sick anymore, you know? And
So
then
good.
the attention comes back and you're like, oh, I'm so sick. But for that brief time, you're like, I'm not sick at all, you know?
It's so good. It's so good. Mariah, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I think this is some great information, and we'll tag everything that we talked about in the show notes. And if you are noticing any of this stuff and it's something that you want to take action on, I think go back to those points, get in touch with More Hair Naturally, and start going through some of the therapies, because I think it can really create a pretty big change with the current research that we're starting to see in this area. You really do have some control over improving that.
So true.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Nice talking to you.